Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. I'm not really interested in politics. I am neither a Democrat nor a Republican. I am neither a liberal nor a conservative. I just, well, somewhere between independent and I don't give a shit. Therefore, some may find it very strange. I know that my parents did, that in early July 2011 I took a sabbatical from college to work on the presidential campaign of Republican Senator from Colorado June Jepsen. The reason is that I was fascinated by her. I think I need to tell you a little bit about myself. Maybe I'm a little taller and more muscular than the average person, but of course it's nothing special. I may look a little better than usual, but if I do, then not much. I was smart enough to go to a low-level college, but even there I was in the bottom third of my class. In general, I'm basically an ordinary guy, except for two things. The above describes my mainly physical and mental qualities. However, I am not normal in my tastes at all. Although I'm 21, I prefer older women. I've never used a woman my age or younger. The youngest was a woman about 5 years older than me. I'm lucky that there are a lot of horny 30 to 60-year-old women in Iowa, where I come from, so I've been pretty well satisfied since I turned 18. As ridiculous as it may sound, I convinced myself that if I was around June Jepsen, she would want to use me, despite the fact that she was married, had 2 children, always publicly supported family values, and was known throughout the country. At the time of my infatuation, she was about 50 years old. She had amazing brown hair. I do not know if she dyed it or not. A beautiful face. She would have been my most beautiful conquest. At least that's what I thought. Although I did get to know June while working on her Iowa re-election campaign and was thrilled when she touched me a few times, much to my disappointment, she showed no interest in sleeping with me. Despite the fact that she was wearing a lot of makeup, nevertheless, I personally found her even more desirable than what I knew about her from the media. I worked happily, smitten with June, but controlled myself enough not to make a fool of myself when I accompanied her to the Iowa State Fair in August 2011. There she bought a foot-long corn dog and inserted it into her full pink lips. I instantly got up and licked my pants without any physical stimulation. This happened to me for the first and only time. Fortunately, one of my colleagues took a picture of her. I asked him to email me the photo for personal use, but only after making sure that it would not get into the national media, as her detractors might laugh at her. After the corn dog episode, I went from infatuation with June to obsession with her. Fortunately, there were several older women working on her campaign who were susceptible to the advances of a young guy, so I could fantasize that I was using June. However, none of them were particularly good-looking, so I really needed to stretch my imagination. Unfortunately, June dropped out of the race early, so I didn't get to talk to her for a long time. And since neither I nor many other employees of her Iowa campaign were paid, I had to find a real job for at least a semester before returning to college. I ended up getting a job in the North Dakota oil boom area with one of my campaign buddies, a guy named Justin. Even though the job was hard and we were isolated from normal society most of the time, there were 2 things about it that made it bearable and actually forced me to stay there until Christmas 2012. The first thing that made it bearable was that we earned a bunch of money, enough to easily pay for the rest of my college when I decided to return, a new car and more, in addition to a significant amount of savings. Secondly, there was a friendly married woman about 20 years older than me who lived in the same trailer park as Justin and I, and whose husband worked exactly the same hours as me. She had a plain face, but at least in my opinion her body was very similar to June's, and she was insatiable. I used it on average twice a day the whole time I was in North Dakota. She especially liked it when her hands were shackled. Justin left the North Dakota oil fields around the same time as me, and we rented an apartment together. I enjoyed Justin's company and he became a good friend, but he had one character trait that could be annoying. If someone offended him, he was fixated on getting revenge. Usually his revenge was something insignificant or only in his own imagination, like posting something on an internet site. Sometimes revenge was more serious, including an accident with one guy's car. Fortunately, not many people have harmed him. Although I often thought about June, especially whenever a story about her appeared in the press, and although the corn dog photo was my screensaver, I forgot that I, in fact, was not paid to work in her Iowa campaign. Justin hadn't forgotten. In early 2013, A story appeared in the national press that June had not paid her staff in Iowa. This story really excited Justin. Next came the story that she was going to go to Iowa to meet with the staff, apologize to them, and see if she could help them in any way. Justin was furious. "Let's kidnap her when she arrives and hold her for a few days to teach her a lesson," he told me with all seriousness. "We can't do this. We could be in big trouble. Kidnapping, as you know, is a serious crime. We won't demand a ransom or anything like that. We'll just hold her for a few days and then let her go. We can do that." "God, Justin, you're crazy," I replied. "Come on, don't be a wimp, Dale. Plus, I know how fascinated you are with her, and maybe if you're together for a few days, she'll want to use you. It's good if we can do it right to eliminate even the slightest chance of being caught," I said, not even believing that I was thinking about it, let alone agreeing. June was making a trip to talk to employees in Des Moines. My grandfather had an empty little house in the countryside near Lake Okoboji, about 200 miles away. It was the perfect place to keep her, and it was far enough away that if we did everything cleanly, no one would think to look in there. I talked to my grandfather and told him that I wanted to use the empty house for a few weeks. He was happy to let me. He called to turn on the electricity in the house. Justin and I went to my grandfather's house, renovated it, including making one of the 2 bedrooms completely isolated and escape-proof, brought new furniture specifically for the safe bedroom, and decorated it. In addition, I read June's autobiography and almost everything I could find about her on the internet, bought groceries and accessories, and planned the kidnapping without evidence. Maybe I should mention something about Justin. He's probably the strongest guy I've ever met in my life. When we were in North Dakota, he worked as a handyman, a job that required tremendous strength, and according to the foreman, he was the most efficient in the entire state. He received a premium fee for this. To prepare for our holidays, we put expired license plates from a neighboring state that we bought at a flea market on top of the license plates on my car. We made some plastic car parts that we glued to my car to make it look like another vehicle, replaced the logos with others, and applied ribbon racing stripes to it. Since we were former employees ourselves, we learned all about the meeting of former campaign employees. It turned out that actually capturing June was surprisingly easy. I really thought the U.S. Senator would be better protected. June went to a meeting in Des Moines with only one escort, and he was a complete sucker. Justin drugged him while he was waiting for June in the car outside the meeting. As soon as it was over, when June came to the car in the dark, we just grabbed her from behind, put her to sleep with chloroform, and Justin carried her to my car about 2 blocks away in a place where there were no traffic cameras. Since we expected the chloroform to knock June out for only 10 minutes, we blindfolded her, gagged her, and handcuffed her hands behind her back, with gloves on. Everything we did was with gloves on. I took her mobile phones, she had 2, and cosmetics out of her purse and threw everything into the car with an escort. We put her in the back seat of my car, and I sat there with her while Justin drove, trying to follow all the rules of the road. The pervert that I am. I pulled June's dress up above my knees to see her hips as we drove. They looked great. June actually regained consciousness about 10 minutes later. I could tell by the muffled sounds she was making that she was uncomfortable. "June, my name is Zahn. I want you to know that you will not be harmed. Although I can't explain yet why we invited you to accompany us, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. If you agree not to scream, not to try to remove the blindfold, or not to try to open the car door, I will take off your gag and handcuff you to me, and not shackle your hands behind your back." She hesitated for a moment, and then nodded her head, yes. I took out the gag, then moved her, removed the handcuffs from her left hand, and fastened her right hand to my left. Her first question was, "How long have I been out?" Since we didn't want her to realize how far from Des Moines we were taking her, I replied, "About 2.5 hours. She started sobbing softly in the car and begged us not to hurt her. She also muttered that the family couldn't afford to buy her out. Seeing her fear, I decided that she needed to be encouraged. I assured her that we had no intention of harming her and that we would release her without any ransom. I put my hand on her knee and said, "Please relax. I, like my colleague Zin, would be very sad if you felt threatened. Zin, please tell June that we will not harm her." Justin replied, "No, June. You won't be harmed as long as you're our guest." Then I started talking to June about sports, fashion, legislation she would sponsor in the Senate next year, what she thought the main problems facing the country were, what her views were on some of the social issues of the day, as if I didn't know, etc. By then, when we arrived at the cabin, a little over 3 hours after the abduction, she seemed to relax somewhat. When we entered the house, we let June go to a private bathroom in a secure bedroom, instructed her not to remove the blindfold, fed her, and then locked her in her room for the night. We told her that there was a nightgown and some other clothes in the closet, which we bought at a thrift store on the opposite side of Des Moines from Lake Okeechobee, and we hope that she will be comfortable. Wearing gloves, the next morning Justin removed the plastic add-ons and racing strips from my car, making sure he removed all the glue, removed the fake plates, cut everything, brought the cut materials to the local recycling center, and took the car to the car wash. Putting on the hood, I opened the door to June's bedroom around 8:30 a.m., blindfolded her, and took her to the kitchen to have breakfast, chaining my left hand to the armrest of the chair. She was also wearing a nightgown, which was probably a little more revealing than June thought. I was starting to get turned on. While Justin was away, I decided to implement my personal plan. June, now that I hope you know that we're not going to hurt you, I want to tell you about the purpose of our invitation. Zahn, why do you keep pretending that I'm visiting? You kidnapped me. Kidnapping is such a negative word. I prefer to call you our guest because we believe that you will enjoy your stay here. Really? June replied sarcastically. Yes. You will see that someone very close to you has signed a contract with us to help you get rid of your depression. June tensed and then said, I'm not depressed. Oh, yes, you have it. You and your husband haven't made love in months. Of course, there was no way to know if this was true, but I suspected it from the contacts we had during the campaign, plus the gossip I read on the internet. I was pleased with her reaction. I don't understand what you're talking about. None of this is true. I'm satisfied. The way she said it was a sign of a lie, according to the psychology classes I attended. June, you have to be honest with yourself, because the sooner you do this, the sooner you'll be back in the Senate. Our employer knows the situation well, so you will not be able to deceive either us or yourself. No, 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 she moaned unconvincingly. Considering her reaction, I decided to speed things up. Okay, June, why don't you get dressed now, and then we'll talk a little more. With that, I took the handcuff off the chair and led her into the room. Sit on the bed, June. I handcuffed her left arm to a very sturdy metal headboard. I silently walked to the other side of the bed, fastened the handcuff on the right side of the headboard, and then carefully moved her right hand to the handcuff and snapped it on her wrist. She had no idea what was going to happen. I went back to the left side of the bed, put her feet on the mattress, and handcuffed her left ankle to the footrest before she realized what was going on. Although she then started screaming and kicking with her right leg, I was soon able to fasten her right ankle as well. I just sat next to her on the mattress until she calmed down. She started crying and begging, but I remained quiet and motionless until she calmed down again. Then I said, if you're not ready for this, maybe I can get you in the right frame of mind. She started sobbing and begging again. The first thing we need to do is shave you, June, I chuckled. June, please don't move while I shave you. I'll feel terrible if I hurt you in any way. Although she continued to sob softly, she remained mostly motionless. As soon as I finished shaving her, I asked again, June, are you sure you don't want me right now? She just shook her head, no, and whimpered. Maybe you'll change your mind after a little stimulation. June, you've been so wonderful, and it's helped you so much. June, you've started to overcome your anxiety and get satisfaction so well that my employer would be proud of you. I'm going to take the handcuffs off you now. Why don't you take a shower and get dressed? Keep the blindfold on until I leave the room, but knock on the door when you want to leave. I did as I said, and when I went out and locked her in the bedroom, I collapsed into a chair and a wonderful serenity came over me. Holy shit, part of a dream come true, I told myself. Justin arrived before June knocked on the door. By that time, I was almost back to normal. I told him what had happened, and his eyes became the size of a tennis ball. Hey, Justin, don't worry. I saw his pants tighten. After making sure June had showered and dressed, I knocked on the door. June, are you here? I don't want to go out, but Zen and I have prepared lunch for you. After a minute of silence, Justin and I put on our hoods and I opened the door. June was sitting on a chair in her room, staring at the wall. Come on, June, you need to eat. I brought her into the kitchen. We made her favorite sandwich, turkey and cheese on rye bread with mayonnaise, as well as some celery. How did you know it was my favorite? Or was it a lucky guess? June, our employer told us everything about you. It's not a guess. She looked puzzled, but sat down and ate. Justin and I joined her. It was a little difficult to do it in the hoods. Our conversation at lunch was light, and then we asked if she wanted to play hearts with 3 hands. We were told that you like it. Okay, but if I win, you tell my family that I'm okay and tell them when I'm released. Obviously, she was now convinced that we wouldn't hurt her. We don't know exactly when we'll release you, but we'll tell them it won't take too long. But what if you lose, June? What do you want? She asked skeptically. Whoever wins, you will do well, and you will not have to be forced. Her eyes widened. She didn't answer for a while, but finally muttered, Good. She won as long as she behaved well. I played along with her a little bit, and we planned to tell her family anyway. After she won, I asked her what number she wanted us to call and what question she wanted us to answer to prove to her that we had called. Of course, we weren't stupid enough to call from anywhere near where we were. We had planned everything in advance. Justin called his friend who used to work with us in North Dakota, who was a Canadian Indian who now lives near Calgary. Justin's friend called her home in Colorado from a pay phone about 50 miles from where he lived and got an answer to June's question. For the rest of the day, I chatted with June in detail about all things, including the Senate, especially legislation, or anything else to distract her from thinking about her lack of freedom. I also did not handcuff her or restrain her in any other way. We received an answer to her question, proving that we contacted her family in the early evening. She cried when we told her about it and said thank you. Justin got bored of staying at home and went to Okoboji to play bowling and billiards. Shortly after Justin left, June had a problem. Zahn, there is no makeup here. I would really like to put on some makeup. I feel awkward without it. I'm sorry, June. You look even better without it, and we will never buy women's cosmetics. It will arouse suspicion. After a pause, she said, Can we at least play cards? After a long pause, I said, I do not know, June. This is not what we were preparing for. Please, the same deal as last time, she pleaded. Well, all right. We'll play gin rummy. If you win, write down everything you want to get, and Zine will buy it tomorrow. If you lose, you have to please me right now and make another one when he comes back. And you have to do it topless on your knees and without any restrictions. I do not know. She began to speak. How about if I beat you in 3 games in a row? Good. I lifted her up, sat her down next to me, told her how wonderful it was, and asked if she liked it. Of course not, she said, completely unconvincingly. Considering my condition, I remained firm and asked for a repeat. The deal was a one-time deal, she replied, though not abruptly. How about I do something nice for you? For example? She asked skeptically. How about a back massage? I'm tense, she replied. Then after a short pause, okay. This time she took 3 sips before pushing me out of her mouth. I made her give me 2 more times with promises of an hour-long back massage, and on the 4th time, despite the fact that her mouth hurt, she swallowed everything. Okay, June, you were great. Now is the time to rub your back. Let's take a shower together. That wasn't part of the deal, she snapped. She didn't say anything else when I undressed her, took her to the shower, or when I washed her. I laid her face down on the bed. After the massage, I got dressed and said, I hope you enjoyed it. Zin will probably be coming home soon. Okay, was all she said, obviously half asleep. When Justin returned home, he told me that June's disappearance was big news not only in Iowa and Colorado, but all over the country. Fortunately, there were no leads in the news. As long as we're being careful and smart, we will be, I replied. He nodded in agreement. Then I told Justin that I had made an agreement. Justin definitely didn't like older women, and he wasn't fixated on June like I was, but being a pure-blooded straight guy, he didn't refuse. So when we were both wearing hoods, I unlocked June's door and we went in. I turned on only a weak light. June was asleep, but I woke her up. Oh, I'm really tired. The deal was for today, June. I knew it was true, considering the tint in Justin's pants and the fact that June was naked under the covers. June got out of bed. I left the room, and less than 3 minutes later I heard Justin grunting like a pig. After about 5 minutes, he left the room and I locked the door again. Did you like it? I asked, smiling. Yes, it was great. Did she swallow it? Yes, and that surprised me a little. I just laughed. That night I was so excited that I almost couldn't sleep, knowing that I was going to use June the next day. I made June her favorite breakfast, and Justin and I ate in hoods so she could eat without a blindfold. After breakfast, I asked if she wanted to go for a walk, as she had little physical activity. I bought a pair of sneakers for her, and after she put them on, I blindfolded her and took her for a walk, holding her hand. Since we were completely isolated from everyone else and walked slowly, we had no problems. We chatted as she walked, and she seemed to really enjoy it. When we got back, Justin left for the city, and I sat her down. June, as you know, our employer hired us to try to relax you. I'll have to make love to you for that. An expression appeared on her face, which I interpreted as something between fright, resignation, and anxiety. No, please don't do this. My husband is the only one. I'm not immoral. Look, June, you don't have a choice, so your morality has nothing to do with this. Would it make you feel better if I tied you up? With that, I quickly snapped a pair of handcuffs on her. A small tear appeared in her eyes, and then she said, "If you're going to do this, then tie me up." I escorted her into the bedroom in handcuffs while taking off the lower part of her clothes and freed her from the handcuffs only to take off the upper part of her clothes. Then I laid her on her back and handcuffed each arm to the metal headboard of the bed. Although I couldn't see her blindfolded, she looked worried, but definitely not scared. I didn't think I'd last long, and I was right, especially when she started screaming. When I pulled away and lay down next to her, I felt as good as I had ever felt in my life. Not only was my brain overflowing, as I had been fantasizing about using June for over a year, but the reality matched the fantasy and I was completely physically satisfied. Zahn, take off my handcuffs. Promise not to try to escape? I asked with a laugh. I couldn't even if I tried. I freed her. About halfway through, she started hitting me back. I was sure I had never felt better. I left her practically in a coma on the bed. After the shower, I rested for a while until my aftertaste passed after about an hour. After lunch, we spent a typical day talking, discussing possible laws, and playing games. After dinner, although it was already dark, I took her for another walk. When we got back, I talked to her again about making love. June, you're the best. Can we have another round tonight? Please, no, Zahn. I'm in pain all over. I understand, I said, kissing her cheek. However, before you go to bed, I will anoint your places with a special ointment, since you definitely need another session tomorrow. She didn't respond verbally, but I swear I saw a slight smile. That night, I actually applied a special ointment that I often used when I exhausted my partners. There were no complaints from June. Before leaving her room, I kissed her on the forehead, put on the hood, took off the blindfold from her eyes and said, "See you tomorrow." The next day, after breakfast and a walk, she didn't complain or resist in any way when I told her it was time for intercourse. "Do I need handcuffs, June? Please don't seduce me again," she replied very unconvincingly. "It's going to happen. It's not something you can control, and it's not your fault. Except that you've been depressed for most of your life, and I'm amazed at how beautiful you are. Do you need handcuffs or not? Since I have no choice anyway, I think there is no reason for restrictions." I took her into the room. She was lying motionless on her back. In the evening, Justin said that we needed to let June go, as the story was getting more and more publicized, and there were literally hundreds of law enforcement officers in the case. It's a pity, but I knew he was right, and I had to agree. "Look, Justin, if she's good enough for me to use again tonight, then we'll let her go tomorrow. You know, Dale, I might want to make love before she leaves, too." "I thought you didn't like older women?" "Okay, I'll tell you what, if she's ready, I'll just use her 3 times, and you can do the 4th, and by then she won't notice the difference." I lied to my soul, because by that time I no longer thought that she would care. After talking to Justin, I walked into June's room wearing a hood. She was awake and reading some magazines that Justin had bought for her. I started the conversation with June. "We'll probably let you go tomorrow. So you think I'm liberated now?" was her unexpected reply. "You've made great progress. However, I think we need another session, and I hope we could have it tonight. You know I've never agreed to you making love to me, don't you, Zahn?" "I know, June, But I've been honest with you and I want you to answer my question honestly. With that, I took her hand and stroked it. Do you need to be fixed? No. June was as active a participant as her fatigue and age allowed. Wake up, dude, I told him. Don't forget to put on your hood and lock her room when you're done. With these words, I stumbled into our bedroom, fell into my bed, and quickly fell asleep to the sounds of moaning in the next bedroom. When I woke up the next morning, Justin was still asleep. I looked at my watch. It was a little late. I had to make breakfast for June and decide exactly when we would let her go. I thought I smelled something, and when I opened the door, I almost fainted. June was cooking breakfast in the kitchen. She turned around, looked at me, and said, "I hope you like omelets and toast, as it seems to be the only remaining breakfast food." I was so stunned that it took me a few seconds to realize that I wasn't wearing a hood and she could see my face. When I realized this, I quickly returned to my room, put on my hood, and returned to the kitchen. "How did you get out of your room, June?" I stuttered. When Zen left last night, he obviously didn't lock it. I decided not to ask her why she didn't run away, since the car keys were visible on the hanger near the front door, or how she knew it was Zine. When she said, "Everything will be ready in 2 minutes. Why don't you pick up your buddy?" I returned to our bedroom. I woke Justin up, told him to put on his hood, and told him he screwed up by not locking the door to June's room, but luckily she didn't run away. He said with obvious chagrin, "I'm sorry, but I felt really great after using it, and I completely forgot about it." Knowing how I felt after using June, I could only sympathize with him. June kindly agreed to be blindfolded to eat the breakfast she had prepared so that Justin and I could take off our hoods. The food tasted great, as did how expertly it was cooked. When it was over, while Justin was washing the dishes, I talked to June again. "We're going to release you today, June, although we need to drive you for quite a while before we do so that you don't have a proper orientation. What we plan to do is drop you off in some safe but rural place, put a disposable mobile phone that we bought a long time ago in another city in a timer box, and after we leave, it will open in an hour and you can make a call." Her response was not what I expected. "What day is it today?" "Today is Thursday, the 17th. Actually, I don't have to return to the Senate until Monday, so you may as well release me tomorrow." Justin dropped the glass he was washing when he heard that. After our full day, at her request, I slept hugging her all night after I asked her to promise that she would not look at me in the morning until I put on the hood. As a last amazing thing, she asked me to shave again after we had breakfast and Justin went to fill up the car. After I shaved her, we made love again. She rode me with boundless enthusiasm. We dropped her off in rural Illinois, everything according to plan, except that I kissed her passionately goodbye, making her promise not to take off the blindfold for 3 minutes. The months-long news cycle about June's disappearance was longer than we expected, and every time I heard her name, I remembered the wonderful lovemaking and became thoughtful and firm. Everyone was amazed and puzzled that June was not only unharmed, but also looked new, better, almost without makeup, and that she had no psychological trauma after the abduction. June's public story, which she told the police and her family, was that she had been kidnapped by a group of liberal activists. According to her story, the activists thereby simply made a statement against her conservative record and agenda, and that they were completely nonviolent types who did not cause her any harm, and that she never felt in danger. She said she couldn't find out anything about them because she was blindfolded the whole time. Even though we didn't think she knew enough to be tracked down, Justin and I were greatly relieved by her story, especially since she caught a glimpse of my face. Among other things, a fund was set up to save June when she went missing. The foundation has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. June decided, with court approval, to pay her staff in Iowa and then donate the rest to charities dealing with the missing. About 3 months after we released June, my parents called me. They had a letter from the Jepsen campaign that was sent to their home, to the address I used when I worked there. I went to see them the next day. When I opened the envelope, there was a check covering the entire salary I was entitled to for my work in the June campaign, plus 5%. More exciting and frightening was the handwritten note. "Hey, Dale, I'm lonely in Washington, D.C., especially on Wednesday and Thursday nights. Maybe you could visit me on XXXX2nd St. If you can ever do this, call me at XXX 5637 and leave a message. Zon can do this," with the date. Kisses, June. I instantly tensed up and realized that on Wednesday evening, I would either go to my death or to heaven.